Delighted to say that Patricia Hy, US Open quarter-finalist, is here with us on this Sporting Planet. Hey, Patricia.
Good morning, and I don't know where you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, right?
That's the beauty of this Sporting Planet. We're here, there, and everywhere, Patricia. So it's currently afternoon for me here in London, but early morning,
I
and thank you for
see.
joining us early morning where you are. Um,
Well, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Now, I want to talk to you about the US Open. Obviously, you were very successful there. Very broad one to get us going. What are your memories of the US Open as a tournament?
I would date it back to 1992 when my third round opponent was Jennifer Capriati, who was a teenage sensation coming into. She won the gold medal at the Olympics that year, and then won a whole bunch of the WTA Tour events. And not surprisingly, she was expected to win at the U.S. Open. So as you can imagine, anytime you play an American in New York, it's just a complete different energy altogether. You feel like you're playing the entire United States. Anyway, so I was having the one of my best matches ever. Going in, I was the underdog, no pressure, and I was able to deliver the level of performance that was needed. Jennifer, I noticed, there was a lot of pressure on her, and she was a teenager, right? But anyways, I came away from that match winning. However, and having said that, that was my third time playing Jennifer at the U.S. Open, third year in a row.
No
So
way.
this time I just managed to, yeah. So this time I just managed to clinch the match.
Yeah, fantastic. And reaching all the way to the quarterfinals, what was it about that year for you in 1992 that everything just clicked?
The beginning of the year was not great. Even though my ranking was high enough to get me to play into these tour events, as you very well know, we have our ups and downs and so forth. But the biggest kick in the derriere for me actually was the ignition that I needed. Happened in '92 at the Olympics in Barcelona, where I played Mary Jo Fernandez, an American. I believe she was ranked 10 in the world at the time, or top 10. And I think I had like 10 match points, kid you not. And I did not convert one. Did not convert one. And I remembered I was so upset. Upset was an understatement. I didn't talk to anyone for 3 days. It hit me that hard. But after those 3 days, I just turned it around and I took to the training court with a vengeance. Definitely. And then from then on, it was the energy that I needed, because sometimes energy can serve you or destroy you, depending on how you work at it. So, and then I had the best rest of the year because of that one match.
Something actually you just mentioned that I want to come back to later is about mental performance, because obviously that's kind of your career now, and I'm keen to kind of pick your brains on that. But just going back to this year's US Open very briefly, who is it that tends to do well there? Is it players who tend to do well on hard courts, or can something be read into those that maybe have done well at Wimbledon on the grass, or Roland Garros on the clay, or is it specifically, say, like a Novak Djokovic who tends to just beat everyone, or has been beating everyone for years on hard courts?
Um, Obviously, the courts are a lot faster. We're coming into the hard court season now, leading to the U.S. Open. I was just in Toronto 2 weeks ago at the Canada 1000. A lot of the European players are starting on the hard court, and they find it extremely difficult because of the change of pace, right, of the speed of the court. At the U.S. Open, by then, all the players would have had their training practices and match play on hard court. We're talking like 2-3 tournaments going into there, except for a few top players who decided they're just going to opt out the hard court season and go straight into the U.S. Open. U.S. Open is so unique, even though yes, there are Grand Slams, 4 Grand Slams in a year. However, I don't believe they are all created equal. The energy, the vibes from the audience, the spectators, from day one, from day. Oh, let me correct myself. Not even from day one of qualifying, but from the pre-qualifying that the USTA does such a good job in just promoting the event. So you start the energy coming in. All the players know it's this massive surge of energy, especially night matches, right? But let's just go to the norm. The bulk of the players don't get that pleasure of playing at night matches. But the energy, I would say, from the spectators, the event itself is no like other. Like I am getting goosebumps just talking about U.S. Open. It is that big a deal in every player's book.
I'll ask you about the women's singles in a moment, but just on the men's singles, from what you're saying, does that mean the likes of a Taylor Fritz or a Ben Shelton stand a really good chance this year, or are we still looking at Alcaraz and Sinner?
Well, Alcaraz and Sinner, they're just on the different level. I will say, not to discredit by any means of the other players, right? The fact, and also because they've won, they played a lot on these stadiums. I know Fritz does as well, and all these other players. There is just something in the Sinner, in the Alcaraz, where it's showtime, and they come all out. Fritz is playing in really good form, and for Americans to do well, win it at the U.S. Open, of course, that's just like above everything, right? Is that possible? Absolutely. Ben Shelton, I don't believe we've seen the best of him yet, and it would be nice to see that. Does he have the experience, though? That's a different story altogether, because of the stress. The further you go, the stress and the expectations go with that. And a lot of times, that gets the better of us, don't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the women's side then, it's a bit different at the moment, isn't it? Because Sinner and Alcaraz are winning everything before them on the men's side. Mm-hmm. Women's tennis at the moment is absolutely fascinating to watch because you haven't got the same people winning year in, year out. Who should we be looking out for, or is it actually really hard to predict who might emerge victorious at the US Open on the women's side?
Can I take 30 seconds just to finish that men's side? I believe there are two young players. Two young players. We're always looking out for young players, right? Two young players to keep in mind on the men's side going into the U.S. Open would be Ethan Quinn, who is, I believe, 2021. He had a major breakthrough, had a fantastic 2024 Challenger Tour. So you got the ITF Tour, Challenger Tour, and then the ATP Tour, right? And he went into Australia before the Australian Open with coming through the qualifying in Canberra, which is a Challenger Tour event, got all the way to the finals. Okay, so he started the year with a ranking of 160, I believe, and now he is, I believe, in the 80s. So that's your young American. That's one of them, right? And also he made a big. He won a bunch of tour matches on in Indian Wells, Miami. Those are huge. And then your second young player to watch in the male would be Lerner Tien. He is 18. He's 18, right? He made his breakthrough in Australia this year, beating second round, had this epic match, 5-set epic match against world number 5 Daniil Medvedev, right? And he won that match, youngest American to get to the fourth round at the Australian Open. So, and 2 weeks ago, Canada 1000. He beat lots of gorilla. I watched him against Denis Shapovalov, first round match, 5-5. This kid is so good, so need to keep an eye on him. So now moving to the women. Exciting times, yes, very, because we got, again, these youngsters coming up as well. I believe, it's very exciting time, but do you remember when Emma Raducanu came through the qualifying and won the whole thing? You don't get better than that.
Being here in the UK, people were very excited about that, I can tell you, with Emma Raducanu winning that year.
I don't think we'll ever see that again. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but nobody had a crystal ball with Raducanu either. So again, going to the women, I will present to you two phenomenal young players, female young players, an American,
Brilliant.
besides Coco Gauff, of course, and Madison Keys, and so forth, Jessica Pegula. Watch for Eva Jovic.
Okay.
Watch for her. She is 17. She is 17. At the beginning of 2025, she was ranked 400. In July, she's ranked top in the 80s.
Wow. Wow. What a rise.
Right. She did really well between the ITF. She won several ITF slash WTA, well, just one WTA Tour event, and that was this summer in Ilkley. It was a huge for her. But these several ITF tournaments that she won, they were all on different surfaces, and that made her spectacular. She won on clay, on grass, and on hard. So keep an eye out for her, right? Your second youngest player to watch is from Canada, not American, sorry, Canadian, of course, and she's 18. She had a winning streak of 22 matches in a row.
Wow.
Early on this year. By late March, she had a 33-3 win-loss record. Okay. Yes.
Wow.
As we're speaking right now, the Canada 1000 in Montreal is going on. She is in the semifinals to play tomorrow against number 12, Elena Rybakina. However, on the way, she beat Coco Gauff in 2 straight sets. So exciting times, as you say, for the women's tennis. So definitely these are two, and many more. Not to want to discredit any players out there, but these are the two players that jumped out to me who's had a fantastic 7 months.
That is incredible tips. Thank you, Patricia, because lots of people won't have been expecting those. So that's brilliant to hear that insight. I want to move on a little bit. Now, a bit later on, I want to chat about mental health in the sport at the moment, because I think it's been such a big topic this year, and it's something we've been talking about on this Sporting Planet as well. Just before that, I want to talk about mental performance, and I wouldn't want to confuse the two because they're very different things, even though they start with the same word. But mental performance training, it just fascinates me. So first off, how did that become part of your life post playing tennis? Was it something you'd always kind of considered when you were playing, and then sort of took it on a bit further beyond that?
Well, I'm not very tall. I'm 5'4", actually 5'3¾", but I'll round it up to 5'4", right? So obviously I was not big by any means, a slight athlete, and my dad was my coach up until I was 15. When I started showing results at an early age, and my dad said to me, if you want to be successful on the tour, I mean, they were 5'11", that's like really tall at that time. And my dad said, if you wanted to be really successful, you have to outrun your opponent, outthink your opponent. And I really took that to heart. And that really was one of my strengths as a player. You have your strengths and weaknesses. So I was very quick on the court, and my colleague opponents, they gave me a nickname of Speedy Hy. Well, my last name is HY, so Speedy Hy, and which to me was like, fantastic coming from your fellow, players. Mentally, I had to be strong because of my height, and that has always just been in me. And I came away, after I retired, I became a coach up until 2017, where I felt like I wanted to help on the players on a larger scale, not just the players, but the parents as well. Because I noticed that the questions that I got and what I was watching was that the number one thing when you ask players, juniors or pros, when they come off the court, especially from a loss, what was the thing that disturbed your performance, that you froze on the court? Then they all 100% will say mentally. So then I thought, that why don't I just go try to help people on a larger scale, and I will look into the mental performance, which I thought, wow, I was so smart, but then when I looked into it, I thought it was a thing. It was a thing out there already. Just not as much as promoted as now. People call mental performance and there are all sorts of titles in it, right? But not to, the work I do with athletes are very much like the work of a sports psychologist. I have always made it clear I'm not a sports psychologist. I did not get a PhD. My PhD was on the court. That from my own experiences and working with players and traveling around the world, keeping me up to date with the happenings. So when COVID-19 hit, not a whole lot of tournaments, I was very lucky to take all my work on the Zoom.
Yeah,
and
of course.
My players were mostly international players, and I worked and I still work with mostly tennis players just because tennis is in my blood, even though I tried to step away from tennis because it was, when you're involved with tennis, you start from a very young age and you feel like that's all you know. And I wanted to explore other things after I retired, but then I came right back into tennis just because I'm like, okay, there's a need for it, and I feel, comfortable in this line of work, and it's almost like a calling.
Yeah. Now, this might be a slightly tricky one to answer, but say I was a player coming to you, Patricia, and I said, look, I am playing in tennis tournaments, but I just can't, I'm doing very well, but I can't quite close it out. I'm getting to finals, but maybe it's a struggle to actually win that trophy. Something actually that some critics have sort of laid against Aryna Sabalenka this year, that she's getting to finals, but isn't actually managing to seal the deal. I appreciate there's probably not a one-size-fits-all for the players you work with, but what kind of stuff would we work on together if I came to you in that situation?
It has a lot to do with your routines. The routines, there are two things. The routines, what is it that you do every single day in preparation, and also when you step on the court. So let's say you're in the finals, okay? Your heart is going to race a million miles an hour because you're just and depending on your success, of course you don't win every title also. So let's say if you have a losing streak in the finals, like Ivan Lendl many years ago, he had this streak of losing. He was in the finals, but he couldn't win the finals. Then it plays in your head a little bit. So we like to make up stories in our head. We like to predict the future. The more uncertain things are, such as a final, and the more we want to win, but we're not quite confident in that aspect, the more stories we play in our head. So I would say to you, Jack, take 10 minutes before going on the court. Sit by yourself with the headphones, put some calm music, and go in a trance and just clear out. Just clear out everything and stay in the moment, because fear is very real to you. I find it not very helpful telling somebody this match is not important, don't worry about it. But guess what? It's important to you, right? So I have to respect that. Now, so be mindful, just stay calm, and just get into a state of mind where you're serene, stay centered. So you want to connect from your head to your belly, just align that, and you go with that. So you want to slow everything down. When we're fearful, everything just speeds up.
Yeah.
And so you have to slow your world down. And when you go on the court, same thing. You got to slow yourself down. There are breathing techniques that I teach players to do, depending on if it's nerves related or is it head related, meaning you talk to yourself in a certain way. So there are different types of breathing techniques, and that's one thing that even in crisis moments, right, if you think about it, we hold our breath. we don't think about breathing. So when you're playing on center court with millions of viewers on TV and you're having a very bad day on the court, that's a crisis to you. You know? So, yeah, I would say, breathing, it helps, and this has really helped other players. Take out your journal during changeover. Take out the journal, write down your emotions. Like you want to dump as much as you can on that journal so you can take care of business at the present moment. Because if you don't dump it, it's going to carry you to the next 2 games and the next 2 games and so forth.
I feel absolutely ready now to go to Wimbledon and win my first title.
But isn't it interesting with Sabalenka? Because I believe she did work with a sports psychologist many years ago, right? I believe she worked with like 4 or 5 years with a sports psychologist. And somehow, I believe I heard her say, I think it was last year, that she just decided to stop, not because the sports psychologist was not good. It was because she wanted to fix her own problems. She knew she was the one. And that's very true. That is very true. Because I have come across many players who think just because they're working with me, automatically that should fix their thing, however they feel on the court, and they are not owning their problems. They're not owning the challenges when they step on the court.
Is there a level of that people can be overcritical, and athletes can be overcritical as well? Because I think I've seen this not necessarily just in tennis, but in other sports as well, where players, particularly in media interviews, almost over-own their problems. Can that be harmful as well if you're sort of over-owning?
Yes, athletes are perfectionists. Perfectionists for sure, because when you're in training, every single day, your coach will say, "Do better, do better," and then you'll get to the point. Well, how much better do I get to? So now, you go on court and you're berating yourself, you're screaming at yourself, belittling yourself, discredit, and all that, and that is very dangerous. That is, that is harmful to the self, because when you start being so hard on yourself, you lose yourself. And with tennis, I can only speak about tennis, a lot of times how high the self-esteem of that individual depended too much of their success on the court. And that's very dangerous. And that, I believe, brings on these mental health issues.
Yeah. Which is an adjacent conversation to this. It's not exactly the same, but there's been a lot of conversation this year, particularly in tennis, around mental health. And I want to take you back to January and a brilliant post-victory press conference from Madison Keys, where a reporter said to her, how have you come to win your first major at the Australian Open? And she said, just a lot of therapy. And a lot of people found that really refreshing. What did you think when you heard those comments from Madison Keys?
Well, she's absolutely right, because forget the tennis part. Every single day, right? We have problems, we have issues. We're humans. When you are breathing, there are going to be issues once you walk out the door. So you have to deal with that, and you put in a successful athlete. Everybody is demanding of your time. Sponsors are demanding for your performance. You have to win for this and that. So you don't have time for yourself. You're always on the go. You're racing, not just physically, but mentally as well. There are meetings to go to, there are trainings to go to, and you're constantly on the go. And it's not healthy, it's harmful. So you have to find a way to let that go in order for you to be able to perform. And you have to be able to speak to somebody about it. A lot of times, actually, in a roundabout way, a lot of the athletes I work with, we talk a lot, not just the mental performance part, but outside things, they all come back to rejecting themselves. Now, when the conversation gets too deep, I would encourage them to see, a sports psychologist or somebody a professional in that field because that was beyond what I want to do. I'm strictly wanting to focus, how do I get you ready for your matches and so forth, right? So, but then the mental health part, and medicine is right, Maddie is right, should be a regular checkup. It's okay. Like going to see a doctor, right? Nobody goes see a doctor when they're healthy, but then that's when you get older, you get these notification or letter, for your regular checkup to catch it before you get ill. The mental health is the same thing. There's so, especially these days with the social media, it is cruel. It is some of these things that are comments, and I know a lot of athletes I work with as well. They read them, and and I'm like, why? Why would you give that energy to these inconsiderate people writing all sorts of rubbish?
Yeah.
And they laugh it off, but it's they may laugh it off, but some can't laugh it off, and it affects them.
And how receptive would you say tennis as a sport is to helping people if they are having mental health struggles in the game? Because, for instance, for a bit of context, recently on this Sporting Planet we spoke to an English golfer called Chris Wood, who says that the DP World Tour that he plays on, they've got these special facilities on tour now that can be used for relaxation, and they're the ones that, speaking about that their doctors are the ones that helped him through his kind of darkest moments in the last couple of years. Would you say tennis as a kind of holistic sport is able to help athletes who might go, do you know what, I'm struggling at the moment?
Oh, we do. I know on the WTA tour, they do provide the healthcare services on site, and that's magnificent. They've gone to a lot of length to make that happen. Now, whether the players are taking advantage of that, I don't know, but they should, because it is absolutely there. And when you're not at the tournament, the service is still available. All you have to do is pick up the phone and speak to somebody, or you go on Zoom, whichever. On the men's tour, I am not so sure yet, but even on the men's tour, they should provide that, because this is sacred. This is confidential. You don't, it's the physical injuries, you can see it. Mental health issues, you can't detect it. You got it's not like somebody's limping. You're like, oh yeah, there's that leg problem, knee problem, ankle problem. Somebody's suffering from mental health. It's up to the individual to go seek help, and I'm for it 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one we saw was obviously Ons Jabeur announced in mid-July, didn't she, that she was taking a break from the sport to focus on her own mental well-being. And do you think that could potentially become more common and less stigmatized almost? Because I guess if you look back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we've come so far forward, haven't we, even if there is still more to do?
Oh, absolutely. It's we on tour we have trainers, right? You got a physical ailment, you go see the trainer. You're right. I mean, throughout the years, I know like Naomi Osaka, took some time off, and Bianca Andreescu the same thing. They came out and just say, hey, I need to take a break. And tennis is very long, and I know on the tour they're trying to accommodate more rest for the players, but the demands is incredible. I mean, I don't know any other sport that is like 11 months long.
Yeah.
If you look at the average, I see players playing between 25. Okay, they're the exception of the sinners because he wins everything when he steps on the court. So he goes and plays 12, 13 tournaments, whichever, right? But it's normal for a tennis player to play 25 tournaments, and the highest is 35. There are only so many weeks in a year, but then because they're trying to make, and the reason these players are playing so many tournaments, they're trying to get the points that is enough to get them into the tour. The biggest thing is getting into the Grand Slams so that they can earn enough money to support themselves, because it's expensive to travel. If you overdo it, 25, 35 tournaments, that is exhausting, because you don't have a lot of time to rest, physically or mentally.
Just on that point, then, just finally to wrap up, Patricia, because I spoke to Dida de Groot, the Dutch wheelchair tennis player, recently, and she said that look, the prize money really needs to be looked at because, much to what you were saying, the Grand Slams, you earn loads of money. If you do well at a Grand Slam, you can basically pay for the rest of the year. If you're a tennis player who's not quite making it to the Grand Slams, it can become a real challenge, actually, to kind of make ends meet with expenses, etc. Would you say that potentially prize money needs to be looked at, or expenses on the non-Grand Slam events, to just make it that little bit easier for players?
Oh, absolutely. That was an issue back in the day when I was playing, because it really comes down to the breakdown of percentages. I don't know what it is now where the winner gets so much. Because listen, I get it. It's attractive, it's sexy to say the winner gets $3 million, $5 million, whatever millions, right? But then, of course, that affects money has to come from somewhere. If the tournament is 900 some $1,000 and the winner gets $500,000, well, the draw is 128. You can do the math. So a lot of these players, I see more players hang up their racket because they don't have the fundings than anything, and that's really, really sad. And the second saddest part really is when you're starting out, nobody wants to help you financially. Only when you make it. But guess what? When you make it, you don't need the help anymore.
Yeah.
It's like you have this fantastic project, you bring it to the bank. You're trying to borrow money, right? Your startup, they reject you, and then you go somewhere else, you make it big, and now you go back to the same bank. Oh, yeah, okay, we'll give you the line of credit of FT numbers, right?
Yeah.
So, I just really somehow want to, if I could, and I keep looking, to just there are passionate tennis enthusiasts, millionaire, billionaire, to somehow maybe in your area, seek out, not just young ones, because young ones are hard to see. You're talking 15, 16, of course they're fantastic, wow, they're so young, but then there's this cross bridge from college to the tour. There's a bulk of them, who are very talented and who needs the help. If I could, I would. So I'm trying to send out the message and, recruit millionaires, billionaires.
Well, hopefully there'll be lots of them listening to this who might be able to help out. Patricia Hy, thank you so much for joining us on This Sporting Planet.
Thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun, and hope to see you in New York.